Greetings everyone, and welcome once more to the Dracovin Empire. Are you ready to dive into the desert sands of Athas once more? Yes, we're heading back to Dark Sun, the dark, very emotional, very driven by many terrible things kind of setting of D&D that we're probably not going to see any reprints of nowadays, but there are some interesting things to learn about. There's interesting places to play there. We're going to be diving into a city we mentioned in a previous video. In the Tablelands video, I talked about Kalidnay. We're going to be diving deeper into it, to understand what really happened to it, who really ruled over it, and where it actually might be more than just ruins today. I am, of course, your host here, Athas and Campaign, but I'll be leading you into Kalidnay. Please, you will have to take my hand as I open up a portal through time, space, the universe over to Athas. Stay close, it's kind of a difficult, deadly place to be in. Really awful, little terrible things happen there. Horrible amounts of defiling magic, etc., etc. Anyway, please make sure to give me a tip before we go. Subscribing over on the YouTube side of things and letting me know your experiences or thoughts on this in the comments below. Alright, Athas awaits. Let's get going. We've arrived at the desert sands, and we are standing outside Kalidnay. Now, if I would dive into Kalidnay and learn more about it, and it's what happened to it, who ruled over it, there are a bunch of sources here. There is some bit of information in the Dark Sun campaign settings from 4th edition. That's the one that I used for the Tablelands video. But some other videos that I could suggest that do provide you with a little bit of information, of course, are the campaign settings from Dark Sun. The Psionics Artifacts of Athas has a little bit of information on Kalidnay, the ruler of Kalidnay. The Dune Traders actually provide some information on a house of traders that originated in Kalidnay, but now live in a different place. And of course, Names of Dread, Ravenloft. Why's that there? We'll get into it. We really, really will. Alright. Why don't we start with the basics of what Kalidnay is today? What it does exist. It is a ruins in the southern Tablelands. It was a formerly great city. Kalidnay ruled over it, and it was one of the most wealthy and powerful of cities. And then something happened. Something happened, and all that remains are a little bit of ruins. Its once great pyramid at center, split apart, driven apart. There isn't a lot of official arts on this, but again, this is one of the official art pieces I was able to find that is linked with Kalidnay. There's like 2 from older editions, and then some things from the Ravenloft side of things we'll talk about. But basically, the city now is a tomb in the desert, ruins, a place where dark things exist, where it's kind of connected with strange bits and pieces of existence. Kalidnay today is nothing. Maybe death, for those that might enter it. Maybe something hidden in shadows. Maybe something connected to the Grey, the shadow plane of Athas. When we look at its history, the city, as I said, was a grand place. It was incredibly powerful, and we have to look at the history that it did have. It rose up to strength under the call of its great champion, Kalidnay, who was the Tari Killer, one of the 15th champion of Rajat, basically one of the members of the Cleansing War, who basically helmed with Rajat's champions, became a sorcerer king afterwards, and took over Kalidnay. Kalidnay grew in power and would have been probably considered next to Tyr and Urk, one of the greatest cities in the early time period. We know this is the basic facts of it, but we also know that the city then was destroyed. And I'll talk about all the different destructions here, but it was a destruction that was at very least predicted upon this. We can see this by House Vordon. House Vordon was a major trade city, or a major trade family that was originally part of Kalidnay. They were actually part of the major trade routes there. It's known that basically something happened, and the Patriarch of House Vordon basically got a little bit of a warning of the catastrophe that was coming. Whatever catastrophe was going to happen. They managed to find some information of it, and he and his retainers fled to Tyr and basically rebuilt his family from there. Again, what exactly, at that point in time, the terrible thing was, we don't know. Now, we do know some of the possibilities of it, and some of the possibilities of where it ended up, because of its connections with Ravenloft. We'll talk about all this, but it's just an interesting thing to know that there were signs in the culture that were here. Maybe not large signs, maybe very small signs, but nonetheless signs that someone could read, someone could predict, and someone knew something was going to happen. What it was, who knows? Now we have to talk a little bit about the ruler of Kalidnay, Kalidnay, and Kalidnay's high priest/priestess, Thankok-an. So Thankok-an is a woman in Ravenloft. That's an easy thing to say. And Kalidnay was a man in Ravenloft. But in original Dark Sun, very original Dark Sun, they were switched. Originally, then, things switched back and forth, and a lot of things have changed. And in 4th edition, when it presents them, it presents it as man and woman. But this is one of those things, is the gender of these two is actually unknown. Definitely, it comes down to the dynamic between the two of them, the very powerful Kalidnay, a sorcerer king who basically coveted a lot of power, and basically wanted to push forth the possibility of dragon transformation, the thing that sorcerer kings are trying to do, a lot faster than normal processes. Basically, he wanted to, and we know this from his psionic artifact, which does exist today, the Orbs of Kalidnay, that basically he was attempting to push things forward a further stage, and use 5 obsidian orbs to do that. But again, it's these parts of things that are probably parts of the story, but not the entire story. And it kind of comes down to, there are basically like 3 or 4 versions of what happened to Kalidnay. And maybe they're all true, maybe none of them are true. It's a problem with that entire thing. So again, we have this knowledge of the Dark Lord of Kalidnay and Ravenloft. This woman here. A half-elf woman there, and a Thesian. But, again, it's that kind of thing of gender fluidity that exists in this entire setup of things. Was one a woman and the other male? Were they both the same gender? Were they both not? There's a lot of questions of what was going on there. And I saw basically, well, mine, there's definitely like some idealism for what the direction was that was meant for this. Because again, there were basically different people writing different things at this point in time, and they weren't consulting with each other, which is an interesting thing for developing a lot of interesting writing. So this is one of those points in time where we'll stick kind of with the more Ravenloft 4th edition kind of combination here of our good leader of the city, Kalidnay, a man, and Thankok-an, a woman. But just keep in mind, you could change that in any of your games if you were actually using Kalidnay. You could. So, we have a picture of both of the rulers. Not quite complete picture. We have a high priest/priestess who basically desires to better serve their master, to better officiate their master's transformation into a dragon. A ruler who wants to push forward a transformation of a dragon and is basically trying to cheat their way through powerful artifacts they're creating to push forward a powerful spell. What does all this mean? This means the fall of Kalidnay, the ruins of the city. And there's a Spellfire card that shows it off here. So, there are basically a number of stories which tell us. If we go by directly what happened in Ravenloft, Ravenloft blames Thankok-an as the cause of all this. Basically, Thankok knowing about the Sorcerer King's defiling magic being used to eventually evolve them into a dragon, and then coming to the plot of their own to basically push the ascension forward. Performing a nightly ceremony that basically helped with that ascension, and basically cheating it along in their own way by sacrificing an additional beings of great power, and in the case of her, and in Ravenloft, sacrificing her direct family and all of her relatives. Basically completing an extra ritual that pushed things forward, and that causing the crack in the ziggurat and the arrival in Ravenloft. Here's the thing. Here's a very important thing about this. That could have happened. But there is more to this, because we have to look at some of the other aspects of that. When we look at the Orbs of Kalidnay, which are a psionic artifact that exists, they say that Kalidnay used those orbs and then accelerated their dragon transformation, and by doing that, basically changed themselves from effectively, if you go by levels, they say a level 22nd dragon to level 27 form, and basically by doing that, lost themselves, lost their sanity, lost their reason, lost their soul, which became trapped in those orbs, became a rampaging dragon, which destroyed Kalidnay and ran into the Teal region before being killed off by Boreos, Kalak, and Hamunu, the leaders of Ebe, Tyr, and Earth respectively, who basically found this powerful dragon that was one of their own, but because did not have the mind and reason of one of their own kind, could easily be destroyed by them, and doing so allowed the beast to be slain, and basically the orbs to separate out. And then Kalidnay's intelligence being driven into these orbs, each containing within them aspects of his personality, which when coming together would basically resurrect him, basically possessing the body of whoever brought them together, and forming himself to have a new body, new soul, and be his maximum 27th level dragon in mortal form at that point in time, reborn as to what he wanted to become. These all tell a different story of the fall of Kalidnay. Now, there's hints at some of these things existing within 4th edition, but they don't really say which one did. And this is one of those interesting points in time where we know where it ended up. The darkness, Ravenloft, also the Grey. Interestingly enough, that could be related. This entire storyline could be related. And here's where I'm going to put on a tinfoil hat, everybody, and theory craft a little bit. I don't actually have a tinfoil hat. I got a pirate hat that I gotta go find at some point in time, but, you know, that was for, fucking shut and see. What if both these things are true? What if, while Kalidnay was creating those orbs and had swallowed them, and was attempting to enact a ritual in with those orbs to accelerate his growth, his high priestess, Thakok-An, was doing her own ritual. Now, her ritual allowed her to be sucked into Ravenloft. Basically, Ravenloft can take things of great power. A Sorcerer King could theoretically be taken. But they are doing stuff that is almost in their nature. It's awful, but it's not outside the norms of their being that they are. While Thakok-An was not necessarily a defiler in the same way, a powerful Templar and Psionicist and servant of them, but went far and beyond what any mere mortal should, out of love, out of adoration, out of whatever. That opened up her to being drawn into Ravenloft. But this entire thing of her own ritual on top of the orbs, maybe they create a schism. The dragon and the man separated. Because of what I'll talk about. And this is Kalidnay and Ravenloft. In Ravenloft, in Kalidnay there, our good friend, Kalidnay, exists in basically a coma, unconscious. What if his mind and dragon soul left him? His body separated into two. His mind trapped in the orbs, inside his gut. Kalidnay splintering into a shadow of itself being drawn in with a amount of its population into Ravenloft, with Thakok-An at the charge of it, with Kalidnay's physical body going there, his human body, while his dragon part of his body and soul left behind to destroy what was remaining of the city after the splinter and head off to be killed, and his mind now being trapped far away from him. What if that happened? What if they're both true? They could be either one or the other true, but I do kind of find it interesting that both could be true. And the fact is, because Ravenloft constantly changes and dark domains of dread appear and disappear. And Thakok-An was a Dark Lord, but not immortal. What if she died? Or something caused her to fall, and the domain disappeared? But because of Kalidnay being a powerful, and again, this is a tinfoil hat, defiler, and also part of his being still on Athas, his mind trapped in his psionic orbs, it drew his body back. But not quite enough. So, though when The domain of dread fell into the Shadowfall, disappeared, and would have destroyed everything. The shadow of Kalidnay ended up in the gray. Think about that. It's a fascinating idea that kind of fits with everything that happened. But it is tinfoil hat. Certainly speaking, it could just be a shadow was formed when whatever happened. It could just be that the version of Kalidnay that ended up in Ravenloft wasn't the real one. It's just a facsimile that Athas Khan was worshipping and wanted to believe was the true one, wanted to believe could awaken. There are so many different directions you can take with this. And yes, the stories are disjointed, but they also fit together. I think that's the fascinating part of Kalidnay. Kalidnay, we will never get really a true confirmation of what happened to it, but with all the little bits of breadcrumbs and pieces of information, I think we can tell an interesting story about what it is. And my tinfoil hat theory sounds really interesting. It sounds like it explains all these theories working. It doesn't need to be true, but again, we're not going to get that confirmation ever. I kind of feel like I like my story very well. I mean, you can always tell me in the comments what you think of my story, if you think that fits this, or if you change little things in it. I'd be fascinated what people think about this with Kalidnay, because it's such a fascinating place, and we are going to visit again in a week about when I talk about this Ravenloft episode, where we dive into the Ravenloft side a little bit more deeper. We only touched our foot in the Ravenloft this time, kind of to see what was kind of going on, to kind of explain its connection to Athas. We will dive deeper into what was going on in 2nd edition, because maybe it's still there. Maybe it never went away. Or maybe it's gone. Maybe maybe there was 3 cities. Maybe there was 2. Maybe there's just one. It exists in 3 places at once. Who knows? Just like maybe there is one horrible defiler left over who sought power and caused the destruction of his entire city at the behest of both his lover, high priestess. You know, 4th edition likes to say that Athas Khan was going to become his queen. And it was that kind of connection that maybe led to this entire thing, too. But again, so many little breadcrumbs, so many little stories. Who's to say what's true? Maybe they all are. Maybe none are. But that'll be it for today. Make sure to check out all my stuff over on Twitch or YouTube. Twitch is my live streams of tabletop stuff, recording, gaming, stuff with friends. All the stuff, though, ends up that's tabletop related on the YouTube side of things. You can always just check it out there. If you're over on YouTube, do remember to hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments below what you think about this. Check out my social media link below. Check out both either live or on YouTube my live plays. My current live play that is stream live is at Wednesdays at 8, Fall of Avonswell, the Path of a 2E game. And I also do have a tabletop kind of talk showy thing where we do news of the week, discussion topics and things, discussing tabletop Saturday 6. Make sure to check those both out. Alright. I'm going to keep going. Until the next time we dive into Athas, or, in this case, Ravenloft. I bid all of you out there a deep and wonderful farewell.